In front of me, I have what is known as a tier list and 85 redstone elements. And today we are going to be putting all of these redstone elements onto the tier list. Z being the worst tier and S plus being the best tier. So we're going to be ranking these based on how useful they are and how easy they are to use. So with that said, let's get started. Okay, so the first one is redstone dust, and redstone dust is used in virtually every redstone contraption, which is why without question, redstone dust is S plus. The redstone torch is also a really helpful item used for inverting signals and making logic gates. S tier. Now the block of redstone is a bit of a meh item. The block of redstone sends a constant redstone output no matter what. Like, I don't know why, this is just such a niche item. C tier. The redstone repeater is used for adding delay and boosting signals. Since most of the time you'd want to have it way longer than 15 blocks, along with the delay function, this is an easy plus. Comparators are a very complex item. They can measure how full an item is along with a couple of other abilities. They are quite hard to work with, however they are extremely useful if you know what they do. So redstone comparators are an S tier. Regular pistons are really niche, and why to use this over a sticky piston? There are some very obscure scenarios where you would want to have a regular piston over a sticky piston. However, most of the time it's better to have a sticky piston. So though they're not completely useless, B tier. Sticky pistons, on the other hand, easy S plus. Slime blocks and honey blocks are both extremely useful items. A lot of things wouldn't be possible without slime blocks and honey blocks. Now, slime blocks and honey blocks are really useful items. They allowed you to make giant doors, computers, displays, and because slime blocks and honey blocks don't stick to each other, they are extremely useful. Easy S plus. The observer is next, and the observer is extremely useful. It can even be used as a replacement to redstone dust if you know what you're doing. S plus. They're used in all sorts of things. Farms, redstone computers, doors, you name it. Even T-flip-flops use it really well. Next up is the hopper. The hopper is extremely useful and can be used to make item filters. The only slight nitpick I have with hoppers is that they're extremely hard to place correctly, so I'm going to have to give them S tier. Still pretty good though. Dispensers and droppers. Now, dispensers are basically just better droppers. Dispensers are better for use in traps, where they can fire arrows, fire charges, and a few others. They can even place pumpkins, water, and lava. Oh, I think dispensers are an S tier. Droppers can't do all of this stuff. They are useful in a couple of different scenarios. I think droppers are an A tier. Lecterns. Now, lecterns are good for affixing a comparator to the back of a lectern, and it will give a redstone output depending on what page the book is on. This can be used to make wireless chat systems when combined with the skulk sensor, and of course they are extremely useful for computers to give them commands when you make logic circuits. Electrons are pretty solid, but don't have much use apart from the ones I just listed there. B tier. The target block. The target block is a very meh item. When you look at it in its basic form, it gives a higher redstone output depending on how close to the middle the arrow lands. The reason why this is so useful, however, is because it can redirect signals. This makes things a lot more compact, and there's only a few in the game to do this. Since redirecting redstone signals is extremely useful, but doesn't have much use apart from that, target blocks are a very solid A tier. Levers. Now, levers are very useful items when you don't know how to make T flip-flops. If you do know how to make a T flip-flop, it's generally better to make a T flip-flop because they're cleaner and levers look pretty bulky. They are quite useful for lots of redstone beginners and even sometimes for advanced redstone users. I think levers deserve to be solid A tier. Lightning rods. Now, I don't know how lightning rods are actually classified as redstone components. They can be used for mob farms and a couple of other farms. However, apart from that, they're not really that useful. I think lightning rods are an E tier. They're good for mob farms, which is why they're an E tier, but not for much else. Daylight detectors, or daylight sensors, as some people call them. Daylight sensors are extremely useful because they trigger redstone signals depending on the time of day, and they give a stronger signal depending on how high the moon or the sun is. I personally think this is very useful, and by default it detects the sun level. However, if you right click it, it turns to detecting the moon's level. This is really useful for town-based builds as it can replicate real life where the lamps only turn on at nighttime, i.e. servers and adventure maps. Daylight sensors are a very solid A tier. Skulk sensors. Now, skulk sensors are a bit of a weird one to talk about. If you don't know how to make logic circuits or signal strength detectors, then they're not very useful. If you do know how to detect different signal strengths, they can be used to detect different sounds, as different sounds output a different redstone signal. This is pretty useful and has a lot of applications too. Skull sensors don't detect noises through wool either, which means you can sort of muffle out the skull sensor. They're extremely well for automatic doors and traps. I think skull sensors deserve to be an S tier. Tripwire hooks and string. Now, tripwire hooks are a bit of a weird one to talk about because tripwire hooks are pretty useful for some contraptions, but they're quite hard to work with. The reason being you have to have a hole in the wall in order to detect and place string for signals. Thus, meaning you could give away where a trap is. If you can hide the tripwire hook well enough, they are very useful for traps and whatnot. I think tripwire hooks are pretty solid A tier. Trapped chests. Now, trapped chests are a bit of a fun element for traps and different redstone contraptions. However, they only really excel at traps, so I'm going to have to give them a B tier. TNT, on the other hand, very meh. TNT is an explosive, and an entity while it is lighting. They can be used to make TNT cannons and TNT duplicators. Very frustrating if what is meant to be a TNT trap just blows up the redstone contraption. So, because of this, I think that TNT is a pretty solid B tier. Redstone lamps are really good indicators. So, used for displays and stuff like that. They can even be used for redstone computer displays, as I said a second ago. I think that redstone lamps deserve to be a pretty solid A tier. Okay, so the next ones are just types of buttons, so I'm gonna just quick fire through these really quickly. Polished blackstone buttons are probably the best looking of the buttons, and they give a 1-second pulse. A tier. Stone buttons look a bit more plain, but they can be good for hiding traps in the landscape and also hiding hidden entrances. B tier. The other buttons, oak, spruce, birch, and mangrove, both all belong in B tier. Acacia and jungle are a bit on the weaker side. They don't look as good. Crimson buttons are pretty similar to mangrove, so they belong in B tier, and the warped buttons I think are pretty unique because they are green and no other button is green, so that belongs in A tier. Stone pressure plates are good for hiding traps, and I think they are pretty solid. B tier. Blackstone buttons look a lot cooler, so they belong in A tier. The weighted pressure plates are a bit of a weird one to talk about because they have a pretty obscure use, but they can be pretty useful sometimes. I think the iron one, despite looking better, isn't as useful because you need more items to trigger it. A tier. No, I think we'll put that in B tier. And the lightweight pressure plate belongs in tier A. Boom. Just belong in the same tier as their buttons. Okay, so now that we have all the pressure plates done, let's move on to some of the others. The different trapdoors. The iron ones go at the top because you can't open them manually. Now this ranking is slightly different to the buttons and pressure plates. Warped and Crimson both go in tier A. The mangrove I think also belongs in tier A because first like its design. Jungle belongs in tier B. I don't really like the look of the trapdoor as much as the others. The birch one is nice and simple, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Dark oak also belongs in tier A. And oak trapdoor belongs in tier B. I personally like the design of the spruce trapdoor. Spruce trapdoor is a solid category A. Right, let's move on to the gates. Personally, meh on the look of the jungle fence gate. B tier. The birch one is very bright colour. That's not necessarily a bath. B tier. Spruce one is a lot more solid. Oak belongs in tier B, and the rest of the fence gates I think look really good. All of these belong in tier A. The acacia fence gate C tier. So now we're on to the business of the list, the transport category. The transport category is a bit of a weird one because there's no real redstone components. However, I decided to include them because they're really useful for farms. Powered rail is a pretty solid item for, especially for things like roller coasters and transportation. S tier. Detector rails are a solid S tier. Rails are pretty useful because while at first it may seem like it doesn't do very much, I think that the rail is really useful because it's the only one of the rails that allow bends. A tier. Activated rails, on the other hand, are only useful for two things: toggling the hopper minecart's ability to pick up items and detonating TNT minecarts. I just pretty well at that though. E tier. Minecarts are really good for transport, so I think it's only fair to give them an S tier. Minecarts with chests are a really meh item. The minecart hopper is definitely better because you don't need a lot of hoppers just lying around to pick up items. However, they do store more items, so I have to give them credit for that. B tier. B tier. The minecart furnace has one major flaw. It has a really good replacement, the powered rail, which is all the way up there. Not only that, you need fuel for a furnace minecart. Easy Z tier. The TNT minecart isn't very good at anything because it detonates instantly before it has a chance to fire at any intruders. It explodes the circuit. Still pretty good outside of redstone. F tier. And the final one is the minecart with hopper. And Hopper does a really good job at farms as well as a few other things like super smelters. So A tier. And that, my friends, is the tier list of all of these redstone components. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to smash the like button, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button and hit the bell icon so you get notified when I upload another video. But anyway, this has been Pixel Gaming, and I will see you next week.